Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. Hope everyone is having a great week. We want to thank everyone coming in each and every week to tune into Business Influencers with the TALRadio.org website. We are so appreciative of you. The show continues to grow because of you. We are committed each and every week to bringing in guests to share their words of wisdom and insights to help move your business and personal success to the next level. As everyone knows, we're all about business, but we also take into account everything else that really rounds out you as a successful business person. That's your well-being, your relationships, and so on. So we cover all subject matters here on Business Influencers. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together, a chance to rekindle old relationships and perhaps meet new people from different generation levels that you've never met before. This is an opportunity to connect in an authentic way, taking out all the noise of social media where there are notifications. You get to come in and engage and share all types of content that are relevant to the people you're looking to have conversations with. Perhaps you may land your next new job opportunity or new business venture. Check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Again, if you are new, you can find us all here at the TALRadio.org website. We're also on Spotify, Apple, and our YouTube channel at Business Influencers. We encourage you to follow us in each of those areas each and every week. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about why we tend to get well-being wrong. So we're going to discuss the secret to how you can actually attain it. And we got a great guest here with us today. Her name is Dr. Clara Seeger. She's a PhD, highly experienced coach, corporate facilitator, online course creator, speaker, and author, specializing in mental balance and well-being, mindfulness and meditation, neuroscience, and emotional intelligence. Clara works with senior leaders and their teams, helping them to foster a culture of sustainable well-being in the workplace. Her approach marries ancient contemplative wisdom and meditation with findings from neuroscience and psychology. Her comprehensive workplace program includes training in the 4 fundamental components of mental balance. That is sustainable vision and aspirations, refining a attentional focus, transcending unconscious bias, and cultivating emotional wisdom. Now, she has got a wealth of credentials, which you can find in her bio here. She's also the author of Mindfulness at Work, Learn to be Mindful in 7 Simple Steps. And she's also has a coaching book called Investing in Meaning, an alternative approach to leveraging your portfolio. And you're going to learn a little bit later how you can get in contact with Dr. Clara Seeger here later in the show. And without further ado, we welcome Dr. Clara Seeger to the show. Hi, Dr. Clara.
Hello. Hi, Christopher. Hi, everyone.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well. Really excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to have you here. And this is an area that I hold a special passion for. I think a lot of times we look at well-being and we kind of think, yeah, you got to eat right, and watch what you eat, exercise. But well-being is more than that, especially when it starts up here. And a lot of times in business, business leaders and when they're managing their teams, they may check off a box, they may have a program or awareness session around well-being, but are they really addressing these areas? Because a lot of times, if people aren't addressing their well-being, they're bringing this into the workplace that's affecting so many aspects of their performance and so on. Can you talk about, just to start off, why are people not getting it right? Or why do they tend not to really address well-being like they think they are?
Yeah, great way of introducing this topic. And I agree with everything you said. It's absolutely how I see things as well. And I think we get well-being wrong. We really have a very limited way of thinking about well-being. And there are 3 major reasons that I've identified. And there may be more, but these are the key reasons that I've found. And the first one is that I think we look at well-being in terms of certain things that are wrong that we need to fix. There are certain circumstances. So in the workplace, it's about having a new role, having more responsibility, having a different career path, or, changing teams, changing environments, changing boss, changing role. that kind of thing. And the same applies outside of work. So that's the first one. And I'll explain why these are misconceptions. And they're all related. The second one is that well-being is something that needs to be pursued. It's somewhere out there and we need to get it. And I think that is actually a very fundamental misconception. And that applies, again, both in the workplace, but it applies outside of the workplace. And the third one is that we look at well-being, and this applies especially in the workplace, as something that needs to be, that's more of a remedial measure. That's, certain, we want to prevent burnout, for example. And we want to address absenteeism, that sort of thing. And so it's really about damage limitation. It's preventing, bad things from happening, which will affect the bottom line in the end. And I think that's a very limited way of looking at well-being. And it gets relegated to that sort of well-being bucket, which seems to have nothing to do with, how the business is performing generally. It's really seen as just something, if our employees suffer from burnout and depression, obviously they won't be performing. That's kind of the end of it. So these three things, that they are related, but they are also separate points. And I think there are issues with, I can expand on them.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one, it's about changing the circumstances. It's really all about the reason it's limited is because we're just managing symptoms. We're not addressing the root cause. And I'm not saying we shouldn't manage symptoms. I'm by no means saying that these three ways of looking at well-being are wrong. I think they're just limited. They're profoundly limited. So the first one is really about, we're just looking at the symptoms. How can we fix the symptoms? And to make ourselves feel better, to make people feel better, it's like just taking a pill and hoping it'll go away, sort of thing, And the problem with that kind of approach is that you never address the root cause, And I think we know that from psychopharmaceutical drugs that can alleviate the symptoms, like antidepressants, but they never actually address the root cause of the depression. They just alleviate the symptoms. So they don't go far enough, but they can be a very good intervention if one needs to take them, right? So that's the first one. The second one is really that attitude of pursuing well-being, of making it into something that needs to be achieved, that needs to be attained, that needs to be got, And the problem with that is that it really operates on a false premise, as if we have no resources of our own, as if everything, we need to get well-being just as we, go to the shop and we buy something, or we go into Amazon and we add to basket, I don't have this item, I need it, click and get it. And that's the kind of attitude I think we often have to well-being. How do I achieve it? How do I get there? What do I have to do to get it? And so that kind of cements that attitude, like we have no resources, we have nothing of our own to work with, but we need to get it from outside. And, we can see the detrimental effect this has in our society. If you look at climate change and all the big issues, that, or even look at the war at the moment, it's something about, I need to achieve something, I need to get something, and no matter what the consequences. And that kind of perpetuates that attitude of, consumerism in a way, it's out there and I need to get it. So that's the problem with that, right? And the third one, which is about looking at it as a remedial measure, looking at it as a damage limitation exercise, and this especially applies to companies, it's really limiting well-being to the absence of disease, the absence of illness, right? As if that's the limit of our well-being. We can only hope to be functioning, right? It's all about surviving rather than thriving, and there's so much more, as you suggested, I totally agree, and especially with companies, people, the well-being initiatives in which I'm involved, with mindfulness and various other ones, they tend to be separate from the core business, which is about performing and productivity and the bottom line. And I think that link, that well-being has something to do with performance, is not really seen in its full potential. So I think these are the three ways in which we're quite limited, and the reason we're limited. And I think there's another way.
Well, let's talk about, because I mean, we live in this world, like you said. I mean, we manage symptoms. Think about it, like medications, pharmaceutical medications. Most products and services manage problems or manage symptoms, depending upon what it is. And what can we do, Dr. Clara, in terms of, is this something that has to come from the top down, or is this a decision that the individual has to make for him or herself to take ownership, to know that this is something they have to do not once in a while, but every day, if something's going to change, if we're going to get to the root cause of something, to solve it or eliminate it, and then start with a clean slate, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that I've been thinking about quite a lot. What I'm saying, to be very blunt about it, what I'm saying is that well-being is an inside job initially and mainly and primarily. And there are contributing circumstances, and we can do a lot from the outside as well. And by all means, I'm advocating that, but I'm just saying that's not enough. And in the end, it has to be an inside job. So as soon as I say that, you can hear the sort of objections, and it's almost like I'm saying, well, it's your own problem. If if you haven't done the inside job, it's your own problem if you're not well. And that's not what I'm saying, but that I would put it in a different way, is that we have ultimate responsibility for our well-being. We have responsibility for contributing to everyone else's well-being. So our well-being, first of all, should never be at the expense of anyone else. And it can never be independent of everyone else's well-being. And this is where, that idea of sustainable well-being, which I'm very keen on, comes in, which is, it's really sustainable well-being has to do with being sustainable, like economy, sustainable economy, sustainable energy, etc. It's something that can last, but and can endure no matter what is happening outside, but it's always something that exists in interrelationship with others. We cannot really cultivate it and attain it in any sustainable way if we're doing it at the expense of anyone else or independent of anyone else. It's just not possible. So it's always interrelated. It always implies also the well-being of others.
Yes.
And taking the responsibility for what we can do, that, and it's empowering. It's not meant to say, well, it's your own problem if you're not well. Exactly. It's meant to say, there's something you can do about it.
It's like it being interdependent, like you were saying, interpersonal, interdependent, be the example. Like you go in and you create awareness for organizations in this area. So, that's an organization that says, hey, we're bringing a thought leader in that understands this to create the awareness. Now it's up to people to decide what they're going to do with it. And if they lead that, if they show that and lead by example and come from empathy and kindness, that would empower people to take ownership over perhaps their own well-being, to do the same for others and keep passing along. I think that's a great concept to do. I mean, especially organizations fully buy into that and start to put that to use.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very much what I'm doing at the moment, and trying to raise awareness around that. And, I like how you phrased it in terms of top down, etc. Well, I said it's an inside out job, right? So it starts with our mind, the quality of our mind that we bring to whatever situation. And then it ripples out. But it has to be not just bottom up, like everybody for themselves, is responsible for their own well-being. That's definitely the case as well. But, I'm very keen on the notion, and I help companies with creating a culture of sustainable well-being in which there is a common understanding that well-being actually does come from the inside, and that we're all responsible for our own, but also for everyone else's. So we can't have a toxic work culture and at the same time, well, I'm cultivating my well-being, I'm well, but the culture is toxic. That doesn't work, right? We need to, there is a balance, and there is, that it comes from understanding where true well-being really comes from, taking responsibility, and then taking responsibility to work together to create a culture that actually reflects that, in which people contribute to each other's well-being because they're also working on their own mind. They're working on their own mind, and then they're bringing that to whatever situation they come to. But it has to be a collective effort, and it has to be an effort that comes from the bottom up, from every employee working like that and, contributing to the greater whole, but also the leaders, really championing that. And so I'm very much targeting leaders and helping them think about it in that way, because they need to bring me in. It's the leaders who will bring me in to do a program in which everyone will participate, everyone in a whole department, ideally in a whole organization, and see how that would actually translate into a completely different culture. And that will then feed into individual well-being as well as the other way around. So it's kind of a holistic effort.
What would you suggest? Because I think, like you said, it starts with creating awareness. And it's always, would you safe to say, would it be like, because discipline and consistency is what makes things stick for somebody to do something different. What would be some of the things that you could recommend that would encourage that consistency? Because not everybody is going to meditate every day. Like they may say they are, but then, something, because they're not ready. They haven't committed full-heartedly yet. Somebody else did, but maybe they haven't. Maybe that person's example over time will empower them to say, hey, I got to do it every day. Even if I don't want to do it, I'm still going to do it. What would be some things you could suggest that could encourage that consistency, in the overall as an organization for well-being?
Yeah. First of all, your point on meditation is a very important one, because, and I'm a great advocate of actually getting everyone to meditate, but let me rephrase that, because meditation will have that sort of stigma attached for certain people, right? Who's like, oh, woo-woo. And how I'm explaining it to people who have never considered meditating and think it's a bit woo-woo is to think of it as a cultivation of the mind, or a mental hygiene, if you like, or a mental fitness. It's like mental fitness training. Like, I think nobody thinks it's woo-woo to go to the gym and work out every day. It's a very accepted part of our society, and it's considered to be a very good thing to look after the health of our body and to make it not just survive, but thrive, be really well, be really balanced, be really, everything, nutrition and muscle tone and bones and everything being in perfect balance. That's kind of the ideal. Well, the mind is more important than the body. And I think we don't get that. It's the mind, you can have the perfect body, the perfect health, and you can be depressed, but it doesn't work the other way around, right? So it's the mind that will enjoy the physical health, but never the other way around. It doesn't make sense. So it's the mind that ultimately has to be well. So we need to understand that everything, and I really meant this inside out job, not in a very vague way, in a very specific way. There are 4 ways in which we can cultivate our mind, which will then influence how we communicate, how we show up, how we embody our leadership, how we influence others, how we benefit others, and the changes we make and the decisions we make. They all come from the mind. It's first thought of in the mind. It's first, the intentions are formed in the mind, and then it ripples out to everything else we do. So I want to see a leader who says, well, it's not important to me to cultivate my mind. My mind can be full of, can be completely scattered. I have no idea of my aspirations, my intentions. I have no sense of priority. I'm full of bias and I can't regulate my emotions. What kind of leader would that be? Would any sort of self-respecting leader ever advocate that? Well, that's what cultivating the mind is, bringing the imbalances of our mind, which we all have, into balance, right? So that's what meditation does. So think of meditation not as something, oh, I'm sitting here like because it's good to relax and it's good to take time out and it's good to pause, which is the limit of how people think of meditation a lot of the time. But it's really a tool to cultivate ever greater mental health and balance, which will then be the perfect basis for great leadership. And any bad leader you see out there, some prominent ones that are around that everybody can think of for themselves, well, you can trace all of that back to imbalances in the mind that are then running rampant, really disturbing the balance of, the world order, if you like.
Absolutely. Would it be safe to say, like, when you have that harmony, balance, and you're more focused because you have more clarity, that could impact somebody's confidence. Now they're coming together interdependently, like you were saying before. How could that not transform a team or an organization, regardless of size? Of course, if there's a lot of people, it might take time because there's a lot of people, but I think it just has a profound effect on what you were saying on what it can do.
Absolutely spot on. It does affect every single aspect of our human functioning and of our leadership skills for sure. And it will translate into all these benefits. Absolutely. And it will also, and that's what companies are interested in, affect the bottom line and the performance and productivity of people, not just the leaders, but all their teams. And it's not just because, and I think that's where the limitation is, one thinks, well, if you're happy, you're going to do well. Yes, that's true. Right. But it's not about being happy. It's not just about having positive affect, as the psychologists say. Right. I'm talking about this deeper sense of having a very balanced mind. I can elaborate on what that means.
Yeah, please do it for a few. Yeah, if you could do that. Sure.
Yeah. So balanced mind in terms of four aspects. The four aspects that I can highlight here. One is in terms of the aspirations, the goals, the priorities that we have. What are we striving for? Right. This can be, are we striving to, do damage to other countries or to the environment? That wouldn't be a very balanced kind of aspiration. Right. So that's the first one. So having a sort of wise, I call them wise aspirations, and that leads to wise priorities and wise intentions and wise decisions. Right. So that's the first bucket. The second one has to do with attention. How can we be more balanced and not be completely scattered, have ADHD, not clinically maybe, but I think we all have ADHD, right? It's like how often do we check our phone, and get distracted, and there's a notification, and, getting distracted is one imbalance of attention. And the other one is really having a sort of mental dullness, not being able to focus, not, being forgetful, being, a bit dozy sometimes when we're tired because we work too hard, right? How often do we have that? So again, so that's the second one, attentional imbalances. The third one has to do with how we perceive reality and the biases that we bring to situations. We constantly superimpose on what we see certain projections, certain prejudices, certain biases, and we then confuse what we're actually seeing with what we're projecting onto it. That's an imbalance. And that, I'm involved in a lot of unconscious bias training, and which addresses that particular aspect, but again, often done in a limited way. And this has huge implications. And, so the being able to perceive reality as objectively and as free from bias as possible, third one. And the fourth one is emotions, and our emotions can be completely out of sync, completely, we've all had overreactions. We've all had a temper tantrum in our time, not just at the age of 2, that's an imbalance of the mind. And also, certain emotions that are just not very conducive to sustainable well-being. If you feel full of contempt for other people, full of arrogance, full of pride, that's not a very conducive emotion. So in these 4 ways, we can be completely out of balance, but we can also cultivate from the inside out a greater sense of mental balance, mental well-being. And if a leader has all of these in these 4 areas, has greater mental balance, and there's no upper limit to how well balanced we can be, right? But even when we start doing it, start practicing, looking at our mind and practicing and cultivating, we can gain greater balance and well-being, and that will affect everything else.
Wow. Well, you've shared, I can go on. You're definitely going to have you back on another show in the future, because we could go on for another hour on this. I love this. And all these things are so important. You know, this is the tip of the iceberg, but you have shared so many golden nuggets. And I want to thank you personally, Dr. Seeger, for shedding this insight with our audience today. We're near the end of the show. I want to make sure that this connection continues for you and the value that you've given the audience and those that will be listening later. How can they get in contact with you? What are you up to? And what's the best place to reach you?
The best place is probably to reach me on LinkedIn, where I'm quite active. I'm also on Facebook, and you can reach me there, but LinkedIn is my main platform. So you can contact me there under Clara Seeger. And I do have some free resources that I'm very happy to share with people. And one is actually on setting one's wise aspirations process, which contains a guided meditation and a workbook that people can do and go through setting their own vision for flourishing, for sustainable well-being, and at the same time setting their aspirations. And then I also have a short introductory course, an online course that people can do in their own time, which is really about starting off on this journey towards having a healthier, more balanced mind. And I introduce people to a 3-step practice and give instruction and background on how to do it. So people are very welcome to access those resources.
Thank you so much. And again, everybody, you want to reach out to Dr. Seeger on LinkedIn. Also, we'll make sure that her website is listed here at enlightened-leaders.com. Again, we encourage you to reach out, get to know her, and she'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Seeger, for being here with us today, taking time out of your busy schedule. And thank you, listeners, each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. Again, we are committed to you and your success. So tune in each and every week as we bring in thought leaders and guest experts that share from the heart. This is all about experience and helping you to move your business, personal success, and well-being in relationships to the next level. Till then, we'll see you next week.